Thanks guys for attending our today's lesson. In this lesson we are going to learn on how to create an excellent file naming convention or the rules that are followed while naming your HTML, CSS, JavaScript and so on, all those kind of files. How do you name them when programming? First, we are going to see how we use the HTML extension. Each programming language has its own extension for file naming extension. In our case, we are going to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In HTML, we have the .html extension. In CSS, we have the .css extension. Why do you have to name your root file as the index.html? It's unadvisable to use the .html, that is the index.html naming convention, because you may have several HTML pages, but you have to identify easily which is your default or which is your root file. That's why we use the index.html. It's also advisable to make sure that you name your CSS file as the main.css. When creating these files or file names, we use the characters from A to Z and 0 to 9. When naming this, make sure that you have not used any space between one word and the other. Let's see how this works in practical. In my case, I've opened my Visual Studio Code, and then we said you have to use the index.html file, which is your root file. Then your CSS, we should have one CSS main.css file. And after creating the main.css file, now that's how you prepare first your root files. When it comes to the naming convention, that is the using the alphanumeric characters, that is 0 to 9 and A to Z. How do you use that, or how do you combine that? For example, we have about page, but we may have several about pages. I have about me, about my friend, or about something else, depending with the kind of website you are creating. We may have two. In our case, let's have two.html. That's one way of naming this or combining all this. Another way of creating this similar page, you can do um, about two this way dot html. This is another way of combining all these alphanumeric characters. We also have another naming convention that is called camel casing. In our camel casing, we may have a contact us page. How do you write these two different words and combine them to one word? You can say contact, instead of using space, as dot html. You only use one word, as contact as page. But when naming this file, camel casing specifies that you start with a lowercase c, and then the second word make use of the u, that is the uppercase letter. And then after creating all this, now you can begin creating your HTML files. After first understanding the HTML or the other naming convention, you can now start creating your HTML website. That's it for the naming convention. We shall meet in the next lesson, that is preparing the HTML, that is the HTML structure and so on. Thanks guys for attending our today's lesson. See you in the next one.